students. Today we are going to study about cerebellum. It's also called the largest part of the hindbrain. So the important things to remember, it's the largest part of the hindbrain situated in posterior cranial fossa. We have already studied about the skeletal system in that skull. We have studied about cranial fossa. So remember it is in the posterior cranial fossa and it lies below occipital lobe of cerebrum, right? We had seen the landmarks of cerebrum. You have a frontal lobe, we have a temporal lobe, and then parietal lobe and occipital lobe. So where is the cerebellum located? It is below the occipital lobe, and from it, how is it separated from the cerebrum? It is separated with the help of tentorium cerebelli, which is a fold of dura. Now to understand cerebellum, let us see this image. Here you can see cerebellum has two hemispheres that is joined together by a worm-like portion. This worm-like portion is called the vermis. Okay, so here what you are seeing is the vermis, and this both sides what you see are the cerebellum that you are seeing, the two hemispheres of cerebellum that you see here. Now let us understand further the each hemisphere, how it is divided. As you see these hemispheres, you see this both hemispheres of the cerebellum. You can see here they're divided into three lobes: anterior lobe, posterior lobe, and as it is not visualized here, you can see in the schematic diagram, yellow represents anterior lobe, green is the posterior lobe, and here what you see blue, that is somewhere below here, is the flocculonodular lobe. So these lobes, as you see also, they are divided further. है ना? You can see numerous small parts. These are formed because of the fissure. Now let us understand further deep about each cerebral hemisphere. What is there? Now in each cerebellar hemisphere, you can see outer gray matter and inner, you can see the inner part, it's white matter. Okay, deep inside the white matter you can see four pairs of nuclei. Let us see one by one. The first one is the dentate nucleus. You can see here one and you can see the other one on this side, right? The next is emboliform nucleus here and the other one this side. Then is the fastigial nucleus. You see both here, and globose you can see here marked in green. So these are pair of nucleus. Four pairs are there, and how to remember them, students? You can remember it in the sequence D, E, F, G. Okay, dentate, emboliform, fastigial, globose. That is how you would remember this. Now we also know that the cerebellum is connected on either side to the brainstem by a bundle of fibers called superior, middle and inferior cerebellar peduncle. Right? We have seen it in the last classes. Now, to know further about cerebellum, cerebellum can be divided into three portions. First is archicerebellum, then paleocerebellum and neocerebellum. Archicerebellum is also called vestibulocerebellum. Now this archicerebellum, now it will be more clear. We'll see the picture in the next slide. Paliocerebellum is also called spinocerebellum, and neocerebellum is also called cerebrocerebellum. Here, as you see in this image, here is the archicerebellum or vestibulocerebellum. It consists of flocculonodular lobe. It is phylogenetically the oldest part. Phylogenetically, last time also we had understood that when we see the stages of development, the oldest one that is formed is the archicerebellum. It is concerned with maintenance of equilibrium and eye movement. Okay, so body posture, maintenance of equilibrium, and your eye movements all are controlled by this archicerebellum. Next is paliocerebellum. It is also called spinocerebellum. It consists of, as you see, I am highlighting on the area. First is the vermis. What was vermis, students, if you remember? Junction between the two cerebellar hemisphere, right? This worm-like structure. It's called vermis. This, and as you see, the adjacent, I am highlighting the adjacent areas, right? वर्मिस के दोनों साइड में आप देख रहे हो यहाँ पर जो इंडिगो शेड में ये placed है, these, right? So vermis and all this together forms the paliocerebellum. Now this region receives the proprioceptive inputs. That means all your kinesthesia inputs related to movements is received at this place from motor cortex and is concerned with coordinated control. Okay, coordinated control of what? First is axial and proximal limb muscles. Okay, axial muscles, as we see the muscles of the trunk, and then proximal limb muscles. Proximal, as we have understood earlier also, part of the body or part of the limb that is near to the torso or near to the body is called proximal, right? And the part of the limb that is away from the body is called the distal limb or distal. Now when we are talking about muscles, you should understand the muscles that would be from shoulder to elbow, that we will call it as proximal, and from elbow to wrist and fingers, all these muscles would be called distal muscles. So paliocerebellum has a major role in coordinating all these muscles. Next is the neocerebellum. Neocerebellum is also called the cerebrocerebellum. Okay, this is also called the newest part. As you see, this part, cerebral hemisphere, this part, all are called the newest part. That's why the word neocerebellum is being used. It's the largest portion. It is the largest portion of cerebellar hemisphere. Through its connection to motor and premotor cortex, it is involved in planning and programming of motor activities. So all your body's motor activities are planned and programmed by this. Okay, students, so we have understood now the functions, right? The functional subdivision of cerebellum. Now, after understanding all this, let us understand what are the functions of cerebellum. The first function of cerebellum is it controls all voluntary motor activities along with thalamus, prefrontal cortex and basal ganglia. In our previous classes, we have already learnt all this, that thalamus, prefrontal cortex and basal ganglia have a role in maintaining the motor activities. So along with them, cerebellum also plays a major role. Okay? Then plays an important role in planning and programming of motor activities. Third, concerned with error detection and correction of motor output from cortex. Fourth, it maintains muscular tone, and timing of motor activity is controlled by cerebellum. Now, maintaining muscular tone, maintaining the timing, understanding error detection, we may feel what is the importance of this. But think, even when we get up from a chair, so many movements and muscle tones and coordinations have to be done. Otherwise, even before we would get up, we may lose our balance. So this is very important, that the cerebellum plays an important role in coordination of all these things. Then beside this, all our skilled motor activities are coordinated by the cerebellum. Okay, so activities which require a lot of precision. It may be even you want to thread a needle, if you want to use a syringe, load a syringe with medication, right? All these precise activities also requires lot of coordination from the cerebellum. And as we already learned, cerebellum is concerned with maintenance of body posture, equilibrium, and movement of eyeballs. Fine. Now, after learning the anatomy and after understanding the physiology of cerebellum, let us understand the clinical correlation. Now, if there is any cerebellar damage, it can be due to a tumor growth, it can be due to thrombosis, right, of the artery that is supplying to that cerebellum, or if it is due to any injury, then there are certain syndromes that are seen in the individual. First, let us see, it would be disturbance in tone and posture. Person may show atonia or hypotonia. Atonia is loss of tone and hypotonia is reduction in tone of the muscles. So such things can happen if there is loss of facilitatory impulses from the cerebellum. The second part in the cerebellar syndrome that we see is disturbance in equilibrium. So when the person stands, the person will have difficulty. They will sway side to side. Okay, side to side with the oscillating of head. And when person is moving, you can notice in the gait also, in the way they are walking, if there is any lesion, any tumor, any injury to the cerebellar region, then the person, when they walk, they may have a staggering gait, as if the person is drunk, right? The person would be walking in that way. So you should not assume. You have to understand if there is any neurological reason. The third thing is disturbance in movement. So in cerebellum, if there is any lesion or any thrombosis or tumor, then there can be lack of coordination of movements. It is called ataxia. Then there can be lack of coordination between different groups of muscles. Then we call it asynergia, asynergia. Then person may show weakness, easy fatigability, slowness of muscle, that is called asthenia. Then there can be inability to check the exact strength and duration of muscular contraction that is required for any voluntary act. For example, I have to get up, or I have to just stretch my arms and I have to pick up a bottle of water. If I am having dysmetria, my arm will overshoot that area or it may fall short to reach. Okay? That means I am not able to estimate how much should I stretch my hand so that I reach exactly to the bottle to pick it up. So dysmetria can be there, then intentional tremors can be there. Intention tremor is when we are doing some voluntary work, voluntary act, that time there is a tremor. Aesthesia is when there is unsteady voluntary movements. Besides that, as we discussed, person may show symptoms of nystagmus. Nystagmus is what? Involuntary movement of eyeball to and fro, right? We have a control over it, but if there is no control over the movement of eyeball, then we say there is nystagmus. Besides that, there can be rebound phenomenon. Rebound phenomenon is when a patient attempts to do a movement against a resistance, and if the resistance is suddenly removed, the limb moves forcibly in the direction in which the attempt was made. Okay, so that can be there. There can be a rebound phenomena. Usually we check it when patients are lying down. हम उनको हाथ stretch करने को बोलते हैं. We exert pressure on. We tell them to push towards our hand. Suppose we move the hand also, if the person is having rebound phenomena, they will keep pushing towards that resistance that was put up earlier. Then dysarthria can be there, which is disturbance to speech, disturbance in speech. Okay, and there can be inability to do rapid alternate successive movements. For example, if you tell the person to supinate and pronate the arm one after another, person will have problem with coordinating such successive movements. So please understand these are the clinical correlations also of the cerebellar syndrome. So students, today we have studied about cerebellum. We have seen the importance of cerebellum. We have understood how the different structures are. We have seen functional classification also, the function, and we have seen the clinical correlation.